Alrighty, folks, welcome along to a absolutely belated episode of Made the Parade podcast, and we've been missing for a while since the end of 2023, but we're coming back with a number of episodes focusing in on the wider areas of culture in the community and sort of wider connections to the bonding community as well. So great to be back, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by a guest. Mark Roxborough, who is a member of the Maiden City, Garrison Fife and Lambeg drumming club. So we're going to have a wee conversation about that and find out all about that. So we'll have a wee chat with Mark now. Mark, absolutely delighted to have you on the podcast, mate. How you doing?
Not so bad. You can see that the name's just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Aye.
Yeah, it's a good one. So, Mark, what I'm thinking of is here, if you give everybody a wee bit of an introduction to sort of to who you are and what you do or whatever else before we get into talking a bit about the club.
So you're here in Newgate Arts and Culture Centre in Londonderry, and this is where I work, Glenn. And I work as part of the BCN project. So my background with marching bands, I've been I'm now retired.
Right.
Yeah. So been in the band for 30 years till last September, the same band called Money Dig. But as you know yourself, whenever you're marching with bands, you form relationships with other bands. And so I've marched with a fair few in my time, you know. And I've always been with one band, Glenn, but you're helping out. You're always, with others when it's needed. And I've been a member of Bandside Fife and Lambeg Drumming Club in Korea, and I found a member of that, and that was formed in around 1999, something along them lines. Okay. So a bit about my background: Orangeman, I'm in the Apprentice Boys as well, and as I say, I have my sons. They've all taken on the legacy there from Money Dig, so I haven't really. I might have stood back a bit, but those guys have stepped forward. So. And as I say, I'm working here in the BCN project, so that's a wee bit about me.
Okay. Talk to us a wee bit then about the BCN thing, just quickly, just what that is, and so that people have an idea, because I think it's been around for just over a year or so now, hasn't it? And so it'd be useful just to maybe get a wee bit of background, just so people know where you're at.
So BCN stands for Building Cultural Networks, and basically we provide support to communities, communities and how they celebrate their culture, their cultural expression, Glenn. So we look at helping them promote our culture in a positive way, to progress it and to protect it. You know, some of the, traditions that we hold. So for instance, one small aspect of our celebrations might be bonfires. So how could we make that more positive? How could we make it safer for all those who are involved? And what can we do to really share our message as a community in the best possible way?
Great. And how's it been going?
Look, Glenn, you know yourself, these things are challenging because, some people can be set in their ways, but the communities that I'm working within, their hearts are there and they want to, they're proud of their culture, and they want to show it in the best light. But it's like anything, they're on a journey at the moment. So this is the first step and it's going well. They're
Anything in particular you would say is a success straight off?
You've hit me with that. That wasn't down in look, whenever you're working in a community sector, different communities go at different speeds. And I think I could mention some real highlights and some successes for those communities, not necessarily for me, but for what they've taken on board. And that might be something simple, Glenn, like, how they've organised or how they've looked into the history of, say, World War I, World War II, and how they've organised events that had never been held before within their communities. But I think it's wrong of me to single out one particular community and say, oh, this was such a real success, because they're all moving in the right direction and they're all progressing. And I think that going forward, I think the successes will be there for all to see.
Well, it's great to hear that there's, concentrated work in that area. I think, there's been a lot of, contributions in the area of trying to promote the positive aspects of the community's culture. And I think it's great to see that in terms of, and it's great to have some formalized approaches to that. So it'll be interesting to see what's coming up next with building cultural networks. We'll not spend too much time talking about that now, but
I
I
know.
think it's,
I didn't want to be coming to talk about work. Glenn, you want to get a good chat with you about drums and
oh, well,
stuff.
that's it.
But no, I think it's important. We're based here in Newgate Arts and Culture Centre, and this is a brand new centre. And we're in their wee podcast room at the minute. We have a theatre, so we can look at the arts in a different way. And there's so much going on in this centre that benefits our community. And reaches out and tells our story to others. And it's a space as well for others to come in and tell their story.
Yeah.
So no, it's fantastic. And we're finding our feet. We're a brand new centre. There's new projects going on, and we're just finding our feet with that. But it's going ever so fast.
Yeah.
We're expanding really quickly.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, this is second or third time I've been down in the building. I think we are gonna, one of the next episodes here is gonna be about the work in Newgate as well. I think it's definitely the way forward for in terms of the idea of the cultural hub things. And I know I'm going to be talking with other people about that. And then obviously tomorrow there's the envisioning the future thing around this idea of that's part of that concept that with the Newgate are promoting at the minute. So I think it's fantastic. The space is unbelievable. I think just having this as a resource in the city for the community is fantastic.
And I think envisioning the future is really good. I think, Glenn, from working within the community in an unpaid role, just, as being a guy in the community, you notice that sometimes we can be reactive to things as opposed to proactive. Instead of looking forward to, where do we see in 10 years time, how do we see our cultural celebrations? How do we think they should look? We're more just for the here and now at times. And I think this is gives people a space to come in and think about, how can we make change, or how can we contribute, or how can we grow as a community?
Yeah, and I think the idea of just good, but having the space to do that is extremely important. I think that sometimes when you look at where these things start, they're wee halls, wee back rooms somewhere, and then you dream of having. Wouldn't it be great if we had this resource available to us that allowed us to really engage with people? And I suppose you can look around and see, groups getting funding, groups getting all this kind of stuff, and you kind of go, what our expression is just as valid as some of the other groups that have gotten funding.
And people think as well, again, they see this great spanking new building, that there's a big bag of cash. There you are. You just go ahead. Like Derek Moore, a founder of the London Dairy Bands Forum, he works alongside me. Like Derek was working out of it's a glorified maybe cabin, for years, and then he moved into this. This is a listed type building here, and he moved into these houses, and then it's expanded from that. And that took serious hard work to get there. These things just don't.
They don't happen overnight.
No, they don't. You're not just given this big lorry load of money and said, here, you can do what you like with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll get into that with those guys a wee bit later on, I think, as well. But I think even just the lead up to this place even opening, the door down at the end there, was. But then worth it in the end, in terms of and I think even just around the Halloween time and stuff, the way that came into play with the things that were on display here, the dragon and stuff that was on display there. I mean, the possibilities here are quite considerable.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of the space. So it's hard for the guys who are watching this to understand what we're talking about whenever we're talking about the door. So the door to the theatre is really massive. That's the only way to describe it. And it folds up, so you can have the whole theatre space on the street as well as having it, inside out. You can have a marching band that can leave from the theatre and come right out onto the street, or vice versa. So, I mean, the options are endless too. And as you say, we used the dragons in Halloween time. So that was a real success.
Yeah.
In fact, the footfall, because we're a new building, a lot of people didn't know about it. So that, next year, I think we're going to do a more enhanced, but something similar, so that people can be directed down here to see it.
Sure. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, listen, let's switch to talking about what we're here to talk about, which is I'm just going to call it the Garrison. Is that all right? In terms of, because the rest of that's quite a tongue twister, isn't it?
That's what we call it, the Garrison.
Brilliant. Great. So talk to me a bit about what was happening around the time that you started thinking about this as an idea. What motivated you to start the Garrison?
Right. Well, like anything, like any idea, there's a lot of people involved to begin with. So we were actually up in the fire station up on Hawkins Street before this building was getting built. And we were using that as our temporary office. And in the office, we were all working very closely together on top of each other, Glenn. And Derek Moore, as I mentioned, who's the founder of Londonderry Bands Forum, Derek's in the William King Memorial. So I had done work for the Newgate and for the guys up here before in terms of Lambeg drums. So if they needed a Lambeg drum for a performance or something, they would have given me a call. So much so that Derek has my number saved in his phone still, and I only found this out the other week, as Lambeg, right? Right? So it must be, if he needed a Lambeg for him, he must have just typed in Lambeg, Glenn. And anyway, so we were in the office, and in the office there was a guy from the Churchill Band. Derek's in the William King, Andy's in the William King, David Thompson's in the William King, and they were talking about fifes and drums, because music's a big part of our culture, and we're talking about Lambeg drums, and I kind of says, well, look, I'm part of a Lambeg drumming club in Korean, founding member of it, and I didn't start it now, Glenn. The guys who started it are Chibs McIntyre was one of the main guys down there. He was a founder member of Pride of the Band, if you've heard of them, and a former bandmaster. So he put out an advertisement for in Korean because it had died a death, the Lambeg drums. So I'll give you the background of this first. I think it might be helpful. Yeah. So to give you my experience and where I'm coming from with this. So he put an advertisement in the newspaper. So there was no social media. I'm showing my age now. No thing. And I had a look at that, and I always enjoyed drumming. And drumming was a thing for me, and my family, as I'd mentioned to you earlier, my grandfather had drummed in Ballyrashane, and his father before him in Ballyrashane. And drumming was a thing for me. So I seen the advertisement, I thought I want to go to that. So at the time I had no car, but my father, he took me out to the wee lock in Orange Hall, it's called, outside in Korean. And I was working an Iceland at the time. So sometimes I would have helped out as delivery driver. So I took the old van out, delivery van out. There was no trackers, Glenn. I made it out to practice and all the rest of it. But we went into that Orange Hall, and it was brave and simple construction, very tidy, clean lock in Orange Hall. And there's a springboard floor in the hall, wooden floor, And they got a guy to come out to teach us how to play Lambeg drums. Right. So whenever I seen him, Glenn, it was a wee old man called Sammy Campbell. And he had 2 hearing aids in. Right. That's a warning, Glenn. Do you see if you see somebody with 2 hearing aids in and Lambeg drums, you must think to yourself, this mightn't be too good for my hearing, So Sammy, he was getting up in years, and he came, and they brought a Lambeg. He wasn't able to carry it, so they put it on the stage. At most Orange Halls there's a stage. And he come up and he hit the drum, and this is how he taught us. You heard it and then you repeated it. So Sammy, he was old, and sometimes he'd hit a double beat, and sometimes not, and it was very hard actually to decipher. But whenever you did decipher it the way that he wanted you to play it, he was over the moon. So you have 2 different types of Lambeg drumming styles, right? I'm not sure about how much you know about Lambeg drums.
Talk to me as if I know nothing.
Right, will it take? So you have competition drumming. And you have what some would call as time drumming with a fife. Right. And the club, because the founder of Club Tubes was the founder member of Pride of the Band, we were more interested in the fifes and drumming aspect that you would have traditionally seen with a lodge. The competition drum, Glenn, is more centred around how good your drum is, how loud it is, what's the tone that comes out of it. And you have drumming matches. So where people, and there's not a fife in sight, where they go into a ring and they play, and there'll be judges there and they'll judge the drum. And obviously, Glenn, you see if you go into a ring and your drum does well that means it's more sort of desirable. So that could, affect the cost of the drum too. You won a certain competition. So Sammy came in, and to begin with, I didn't know what style of drumming Sammy was doing, but if it was the competition drumming or the time drumming. But what it did please me was if he got it right by accident, and I'll tell you, at that time it was by accident, if you got it right, he was delighted, And Sammy, he whenever he passed away, I'll finish this wee bit in the Sammy thing. He had a special set of canes. When you hit the Lambegs with canes. And he had a special set of canes, Glenn, and they were handed to me. And the drum that we learnt on, the Bandside Drumming Club, they also presented me with that drum as well. And that was the one that Sammy had taught us on. But there's a set of canes, you can have a wee look at them there. But right, so that was, the club was started in Korean.
Look like something I get hit with at school, to be honest with you.
Well, that's it. That's exactly right. That's, and those are quite straight. Normally after, because I just keep them. For I don't really play with them. For Sammy's memory, but you normally with hitting them, there would be an actual bend on them too, Glenn.
Right.
And those are a wee bit different than your usual canes, in the colour, and also normally you have a leather at the bottom here. So these are a wee bit different that Sammy had made for him.
Okay.
So the club was going strong, and as I say, I had remained. Although whenever you're out with the band, you don't really get a chance, Glenn, to be at a lot of things. And with the drumming club, and at that time I had no children and so forth. So as time moves on, but I always had that connection with the club. And there's another guy in the Korean club, a guy called Richard Hodges, brilliant fella. Now he'll not. I taught him how to drum, but he'll never admit that. Right.
Okay.
So I had him round the table. So, but anyway, another guy is so you have Tubes and Dick Hodges. So basically, I had this background to Lambeg drumming. Derek had my number saved as Lambeg. But I had sort of drifted in and out of I'd never left the club, but I wasn't just as contributing as much as what I could have done. The way things, you have other things going on, But, so whenever we were up here, every year for over 20 years, our club, and I've always been here for every year of 20 years, came up and played the Lambegs at the bonfire in the fountain to support the fountain, to support their celebrations. So we've been doing this for over 20 years, and we just sort of said in the office one day, the guy said, you's come up with a club, could we be part of this? And then these guys are in other bands, and we said, well, why don't we form our own club in Londonderry as a sister club to the Korean club? That we'll work together, but we'll maybe do our own thing in terms of looking at the sounds of the siege, and that historical link. And there was Lambegs played in Londonderry. We have unearthed a lot of old photographs and stuff. So there's history there of them in the city. So why don't we reignite that and keep that going? So the guys said, right, that's okay. Well, we'd be interested in helping to form this club. And then we thought then about a name. And, the apprentice boys shut the gates, the young boys, but it was the garrison who were stationed within the walls who were there to protect the inhabitants. And we thought that Garrison would be a good name. And then we read a wee historical thing. And I was keeping you going earlier, Glenn, about reading to you 30 pages. I'm not going to read 30 pages to you. But up in St. Colum's Cathedral, there's two defenders of the siege that are buried up there within the cathedral. One of them was Captain Browning, who was killed at the boom. His wife was in the walls throughout the whole 105 days of the siege. And another person who's up there is Colonel Henry Baker, who died of flu whilst defending the city. And there's a wee tiny bit about him in a book entitled The Fighters of Derry. And it mentions Major Henry Baker, Governor of Derry, died 30th of June 1689. And it mentions he was given command of the remnant of Sir Arthur's dragoons. In all the early sorties of the garrison, he was conspicuous in the field, particularly in the 21st of April when the French General de Beaumont was killed. And it goes on to speak about how that many who gave siege accounts pay warm tribute to him. And it also goes to the deep regret of the garrison. He died of a fever on the 30th of June. His place as governor being filled by Major Mitchelburn. And this talks about him being a leader of the garrison, and that's where the name was born out of.
Okay. So there's a lot of things there you've mentioned in regards to it's not just about connecting with the history of the music in terms of the instruments there, but there's also this idea that the garrison is connecting to the history of the city as well. And it's interesting you're mentioning there even just some of the names there. Those names will be very familiar to some people within the community in terms of Mitchelburn and all that kind of stuff, The
Baker Club of the Apprentice Boys, Mitchelburn Club, so it's about keeping that alive and the sounds of the siege alive. There's a painting by a Dutch artist, Rembrandt, and it's called The Night Watch. And it's basically a company of troops. And in the corner of that painting, it dates from 1649, that painting. And in the corner, there is a guy with what is essentially a Lambeg drum.
Right, okay.
Glenn, it's not played the way that we know it to be played.
Yeah.
It actually looks more like a larger side drum, but it's the way it's made. The principle in it is the exact same.
Yeah.
So in 1649, it's made with the ropes. It's a rope tension drum with the goat skin and the wooden shell and the wooden hoops.
Yeah.
So, there's been a lot of varying views, let's say, on the origins of the Lambeg drum. But like that was 1649. We know William's Dutch Blue Guards were here at the Williamite Wars. So, these drums, although they can't be attributed the way they're played now, that's we think in around 1850s, but and just before it, maybe 40 years after the Battle of Diamond, they certainly, there was big drums like that at the time of the siege. Okay. So we want to try and keep that aspect of it alive. In terms of a fife is a really primitive instrument. It's just a piece of wood with holes bored into it. You have the wee brass bits at each end that are just if somebody drops it, Glenn.
Yeah.
And just to protect the wood. And there's evidence of those, you're 600 years ago and more. There's somebody had found one in Switzerland. I should really be researched. And again, so primitive instrument that would have been used. So we're trying to keep the sounds of the siege alive.
Yeah. So I think it's really good, and we'll try and talk a wee bit more about the history of drum. You mentioned there in terms of the style of drumming coming in after the Battle of the Diamond and stuff as well. We'll maybe get into a wee bit of that if you're up for it. But you were talking a wee bit there as well about obviously the need for keeping the sounds of the siege and then developing the club. What was the early days of the Garrison like? What was kind of happening?
So we're quite unique, Glenn, because what we did was we looked at forming this club and seeing if there was any of the bands within the Londonderry area would like to become involved, their members. So like I'm proud to say in our first major outing, which is the 11th of August at the bonfire, we had members there in our club who are also members of other bands, like Churchill Flute Band, Brady Pipe Band, we had a representative there. We had Burntullet, Sons of Ulster, Sergeant Lindsay Mooney. We had the William King, obviously, East Bank, New Buildings, Orange and Blue. And I'm scared to miss out anybody here because we had guys from Moneydig there.
Right.
So there's not many times when you can pull together those sorts of people from different bands all into the one idea. As you know, in the band that you play in, it's a different style maybe to some of the more first flute bands. And to try and get them to come together, but they were able to come together through the fifes and the drums. So we put a call out, and I have had the privilege to work with Burntullet, Sons of Ulster. If Moneydig wasn't out, where I lived at the time, that was the local band. So I was able to help them out, Glenn. So not that they needed much helping, but at the same time, they allowed me to come in, and I've great affection for them. So a number of their members came and joined the club.
Okay.
And our chairman of the club at the minute is a guy called Stuart Adair,
right.
Former bandmaster of Burntullet Band. So you're pulling all these bands together, and that's how it formed, and that's how it started. Okay.
So in terms of getting that started, it doesn't sound like there were too many obstacles in your way. Once you started talking about this, that you generated some level of interest. What would you say was the hardest thing about setting it up?
Glenn, you're finding your feet as you go along, and you might think to yourself, well, you're starting something from scratch and you've no instruments. We've had a load of support. As I said to you, I have vast support for Bandside, Fife and Lambeg Drumming Club. If I called them, Glenn, tomorrow, and this is what our community should be about, if I called them tomorrow looking for Lambeg drums, they'd have them up with me tomorrow. There's no issue. But we were able to get funding and support there from Action for Community Transformation for 16 fifes. So, and then we've acquired more now.
Right.
We also got support from the Ulster Scots Agency in terms of their tuition grant. So we can teach people in the 20-week tuition programme. We got support from Newgate, obviously, where Newgate have been extremely supportive and have allowed us to use their premises to practice. And they've helped us in acquiring drums. So we're at a point there where we have our own access to 3 Lambeg drums and 19 fifes. But you're talking about obstacles. I think the obstacle is getting people, Glenn, to break down the barrier that it's a hard instrument to play, the Lambeg, or the fife's a hard instrument to play. To break down the perception that, I'm not sure if I could play that, or it's, because it's not technical, it's primitive. And it just takes a wee bit of getting used to and a wee bit of practice. So that was one obstacle. Another obstacle, Glenn, is, we're looking at the historical aspect, and, whenever we were first out and parading in August, and we had some guys in period uniform. So, but to some people looking out from the outside in, go, you'll not catch me in a pair of tights, you know what I'm saying? But it was, we just wanted to put a bit of flavour. We don't have this vision at the minute of us going out with full period costume. We have our own club polo shirts, but we were able to have a cannon on loan again, another support from the Siege Museum. The apprentice boys, we managed, they said, look, you can have the use of a cannon, you can tow that in front of you. We're able to supply a guy who does a lot of theatre productions, Jonathan Burgess, was able to say, look, here's help with uniforms. I mean, we've had so much support. Norman Roxborough, another guy from the Fountain, helped out with the uniforms too and gave us a lot of advice. So, but our obstacles are things like that. It's breaking down barriers, perceptions, look, about the reenactment side of things.
Yeah.
But the members have grown within the club, and they now see that actually it's no bad thing, that actually. Yeah. Why should we be ashamed, Glenn, of our culture, that you think to yourself, those defenders were up there for 105 days, so many of them starved to death, thousands. And that we're, and we're to be like, maybe thinking, oh, here, I'm not going to do this in a wet night. But no, they've actually turned a corner and they've gone. But another obstacle, Glenn, and I think you'll find this, is that, people's time is hard to come by. And as a club, we don't, and this is maybe something a bit strange for other organisations, we don't ask for dues or money. It's a free thing. It's a social thing, Glenn, where people can come together of all ages, from all these different bands, have a chat together and keep a tradition alive. So it's not about big fundraisers for money. We've been very blessed in how that we've been supported. But an obstacle is time, because these other guys, like the William Kings, see, before their contest, they're practicing on 2 nights a week.
Yeah.
And like the guys in Bertulla are practicing throughout the year, and all the bands. So we just have to have the balance where we have the guys up to a particular standard, and then we take a break and give the guys a rest from it, and then we'll pick up again closer then to August again.
Okay. So it's a full-time passion, but not a full-time occupation, I suppose. That's the way to look at it. Yeah. So talk to me a wee bit about the historical aspect, because we started to touch a wee bit on that in terms of the drum and the fife itself in regards to the connection. Obviously, we see the connection in terms of the fife a lot in regards to the fact that we have the majority of our, sort of musical tradition here seems to evolve around flutes and so on. And obviously the Lambeg drum, to some degree, probably evolves into the idea of the bass drum and the military side of things that comes from it. But talk to us a wee bit more about that historical development of those particular instruments and their importance as opposed to just society here. Because I don't think people connect them with that. Sometimes they see them as as something to be viewed negatively or whatever, but it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, because Lambegs are, what I have found, they divide everybody. So they cross the divide by dividing everybody. There's some people within unionist communities don't like the sound of them. And I remember whenever we were first coming up here to Londonderry in the 11th of August nights, the reception from some was brilliant. And some from others was, what a racket, but again, this is people not having an understanding, and I'll go into that now as well in a minute. But you see now, if we weren't there, them same people, them years ago that were saying it's a racket, they would want to say her now.
Right, okay.
You know what I mean? It becomes a thing where, but it comes down as well to that some people just think it's a blattering session. And again, I was talking to you about the two different types of drumming, Glenn. You have the competition drumming, which is played at very fast rhythm, and it's very fast. But the time drumming with the fifes, you could have 3 Lambeg drummers and they're playing identical together and they're playing beat for beat. And I think whenever people see that, they gain an appreciation more for it. They go, well, hold on a minute here. And then as well, whenever they're playing it with the fife and they hear the fifes going, they go, right, because the drum's an accompaniment. It's to accompany and give rhythm and a beat to the fife tunes. So in terms of history and stuff, Glenn, you know, there's been, as I said to you earlier on, there's been like loads of talk as people have tried to claim where Lambeg, they know where Lambeg comes from and all the rest of it. But you know, you look back to newspaper articles back then and there isn't very many on them that talks about Lambeg drums. Like nobody's writing in and saying, here, will I tell you, there was a big drum coming down our street, you know, on the front of the page, you know, anybody knowing about this? You know, and people say that, you know, the village of Lambeg, that was for the first time that they used canes as to hit the drums and these sort of things. So, you know, we do know that they were used in processions. And Glenn, they were used in processions as well for the Hibernians. You know, people think that they're a very orange instrument, but it just died out with the ancient order of Hibernians. Like, you know, there's talk of, you know, drums being loaned to Hibernian clubs and vice versa.
Yeah, I've heard that as
and
well.
They would have painted the difference, you know, Brian Boru out and King William in, or whatever the case may be. But what people don't realise is that, you know, we were talking, you had mentioned there, maybe you didn't use the word development, but how that you know, what's the timeline with these instruments? And the thing is, with the flutes that we would be playing, Glenn, you know, there's been adaptations and there's been changes to the flutes to try and make that better tone or whatever the case may be. Yes, they use different types of wood in terms of the fifes to see, you know, but they haven't changed. It's still that primitive instrument, which I think is, you know, something to be cherished and held on to.
Yeah.
And in terms of the drums, I was explaining to you about that painting. The Lambeg drum and the way it's played now, look, obviously people in Northern Ireland, they want to be the biggest and the best. These drums have expanded as far as they can go. Anything they do, they think, here, I can do that a bit better, a bit louder, a bit bigger. So, you know, you can understand where in that painting, that big stave drum was drummed with one side. Somebody's obviously thought to themselves, here, you know what, I think if I bang the 2 sides, I'll get twice as loud. But you know, they progressed and people experimented. Some used brass as a shell, but then the condensation didn't help with the goat skins. But the makeup of the drum now, Glenn, is the same as what it was all them years ago. The skins are goat skins. You have it's a rope tension drum with buffs and with leather buffs and with an oak shell and a couple of hoops. I mean, it's still that primitive instrument, and I think that's something to hold on to, that it hasn't changed. And also, and I think that we could somebody needs to verify this, but it's been
fact check alert.
Yeah, it's been said it's the loudest folk instrument in the world,
Right.
and I have no reason to disbelieve that. And it is, you know.
Well, I think if anybody's heard a lot big drum, they'll probably would go along with that, you know.
Maybe hold the fact check. but no. So they've been used with orange processions. But then there's mention of the Lambegs from like 1850s on. But like, you know, as I was saying to you, my great grandfather was a founder member of Ballershane Band. That's 1908,
right? And
they had Lambeg drums prior to that. So which have some of those drums from that area have been actually refurbished and found by the Korean guys and preserved, which I think is great. The old paintings as well. So, you know, to me, there was a time then and around that where there was a change then more to the bands. And, you know, it can be, I can understand why people have gone to competition drumming. I know there's the whole competition aspect of it. But there was a real shortage of fifers for a while there and around, like, you know, in Korean area, we found there was different legends, you know, of, you know, guys who had Fifer Connolly.
Right.
The guy was mentioned in the Korean club has his fife, a guy from years ago but you can imagine, and it's very frustrating, Glenn, if you're playing this instrument here and somebody's beside you with a Lambeg drum that's far, far louder than the shrill, even how shrill this fife is. You can understand how you'd be a bit frustrated thinking, nobody's hearing my tune here at all.
Yeah.
All they're hearing is this other guy. So you can see how things could evolve, that, you know what, we maybe need more fifers. maybe need so, and then the drums maybe need to go a bit smaller. Maybe, and you can see how things could evolve into the bands. And so,
Yeah.
and it's interesting as well that Ballyrashane band play with a type of rhythm, and there's the Curran as well play with those skeleton drums, the brass.
Yeah, yeah.
Ballyrashane don't play with the skeleton drums, but they play with that same sort of rhythm in the drums, which is not dissimilar to a Lambeg rhythm, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, and because those bands always seem to stand out when they're on parade and stuff. I mean, I know we would when we were forming up at on Derry Day, and one of those guys were beside us. It's that triplet type feel of everything. There's no solid rule or anything like that. There, it's just very much a case of you can see the connection with that. Were there any other uses for Lambeg drums? Because I know there's other, there's stuff going back into, sort of maybe folklore saying that the drums were used like the past messages and things from village to village. How true is that?
That's something that I couldn't answer, Glenn, because I have read those stories as well. I've read the stories where, signals in battle, to beat the retreat and all this sort of stuff. And, I'm not so sure about that. I would have thought more in terms of the British Army. That would have been through bugles and those types of instruments.
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't through a Lambeg drum, but...
No, I don't think it would have been maybe that there, because I know obviously from the development of the corps of drums within the army and stuff like that, there that the drummer side of things did become that thing. It was that regimented beat style of thing, and there were certain things that were played that like bugles and other things, but there were also the development of the drummer of keeping to a particular pace, and when they were marching on the lead up into battle and things like that there as well. You know what I mean? It was like one of those kind of things that was brought in as part of that. But I know that in folklore, I've heard people talking about, that the Lambegs were used for this idea of passing messages across and all the sound of the drums going across the hills and all this kind of thing. But I mean, I as I say, it was one of those things I always thought was urban legend or like, well, not urban legend, but you know what I'm saying?
I know, a sort of Lambeg Morse code. I wonder how you would determine, Glenn, if things aren't going good in your area, right? I wonder what sort of beat you would send out, and if they're going right, would you send out like a lighter beat or something? Listen, it's hard to know, but yes, these stories are I don't know if all of them will be without substance.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day,
they've come from somewhere.
Yes, it's just that we find that from our community, a lot of stuff isn't just catalogued and written down.
Yeah.
But they're interesting.
Yeah. No, I think the idea of, someone like, it's like a sort of an ancient kind of ringtone, it's like
the Jacobites are coming.
Oh dear. So there's lots of stuff that delve into in regards to the history of the drum, the history of the fife here and stuff. And I think it's great that we do that. And I think that, it's important that we connect to that heritage, because what we do today is very much rooted in this experience that you're talking about. And I think, that it's always important to hold on to where that's come from, not just for any sense of, legitimacy. That's part of it. But I think just in terms of being able to connect with your history is an extremely important part of who you are today, because like you say, things develop, and we're in a period of development even now in terms of our, our music and all those kind of things, so there's lots of things that have transitioned in terms of that. So it's always good to make sure that we don't forget where everything actually came from.
Yeah, and not only that, even in terms of whenever we talk about where things come from, I know this is not where the point that you're making, Glenn, but the Lambeg is completely made in Northern Ireland. It's completely sourced in Northern Ireland. It's brought together. There's not too many countries can say, name me an instrument that comes solely or specifically from and I know that there is. Instruments like, I suppose Australia have the didgeridoo. There is instruments like there, but at the same time they're few and far between, and there's something that we should cherish.
No, and I think that's an interesting point as well, because I think the connection, with the Lambeg, and then another what I would say is an indigenous form of music here. You'll not find the concept of blood and thunder anywhere else. on the word. I mean, fifing and drumming, or that core of drums tradition, is prevalent in a lot of countries. You know, we already mentioned Switzerland in terms of being a hotbed for that, but also, but there's nowhere else on the planet that has that type of style attached to it. So the Blood and Thunder, and I think the idea of the bass drum and the loudness that comes from the bass drum and sort of that type of band, there's an obvious historical connection there as well.
Yeah.
So let's move on, and we'll talk a wee bit about in terms of how the club's going.
Yeah.
So now let's talk a wee bit about where's the club at. What are you gearing up for? What's going on? What's happening?
So we've been asked, Glenn, to do a fair few different functions. The club's going really well. So we would have, in terms of numbers, maybe 17 or so fife players. And we have maybe about 3 or 4 Lambeg drummers. But then again, we also have the band side guys, as I was talking to you about, in Korean, and we all come together. So if there's something going on, we would come together. But our biggest event will be the 11th of August bonfire in the fountain.
Okay.
So last year, as I'd mentioned before, we had a touch of the reenactment, a touch of the period costume. We had the cannon and a couple of fire sticks. So we wanted to introduce, at the time of the siege, when the siege was lifted, there was a number of small fires that were burnt around the walls in celebration. So we wanted to have the torches as, to bring that sort of back again, that they would have been used, and the torches would have been used to have lit those small fires. So next year, Glenn, we're looking to have 13 torch bearers. And the guys that run the fountain bonfire have been very supportive. So last year, whenever they had made their bonfire, the guys in the period costumes came down with the flaming torches and handed them over. And a wee bit of ceremony to it, handed it over to the bonfire builders, and that's what they had used then to light their bonfire. So we're looking to build on that then this year. We're looking to have 13 torches for the obvious reason of the 13 apprentice boys.
Okay.
And we're looking to also expand. There's a couple of things that are on the horizon that are quite special that I'm not sure that we just want to disclose just yet.
All right.
But Glenn, so like last year we had fireworks it was a real festival feel around the bonfire.
Yeah.
And this year we want to do the same again and to build on it. So there's been people have reached out to us and offered us different bits and pieces. I'm not going to go any further, that are siege related, that will be a part of the procession.
Brilliant. Sounds interesting, to be honest with you. It also sounds like you should potentially approach Mr. Bezos around some royalties around the fire sticks. So you kind of
we took a trip over to Lewis in Sussex. And they have a parade there for Protestant martyrs.
Yes, that's right.
They've actually a banner on parade with King William on it.
Really? Right?
Yeah. So and they have different bonfire societies, and they're big into using the flaming torches or the fire sticks. So, I wouldn't say that our inspiration came solely from that trip, but it was something worth exploring for here. Using fire in terms of a festival as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. But what's a typical date like then? Whenever you all meet up, what's the crack there?
So the crack at the minute, Glenn, is we've just finished meeting up at the end of February. The guys are all at a level now. We have a couple of, this is a good thing as well, that we have a couple of people who are older in years who come into the centre then on the Tuesday afternoon, and they were ex-bandsmen from years ago, both in the William King. And they just want to get back playing again. They want the social aspect. They want to be able to be part of something, but without the commitment of having to sell tickets and go every weekend and stuff. So they're practicing a Tuesday afternoon, but our practices have actually stopped, Glenn, at the minute. Because the guys, again, we're going to what we would call maybe the marching season. So they're going to be out every weekend and all the rest of it. So, but a typical practice for us would look like we come in, we warm the fifes up. We have your usual social minute or two before practice. We look at the repertoire of tunes that we have. We go through them and we look to see if we can expand them, or is there anything we'd like to add. And we're also, we're invited to different concerts and things, Glenn. And nobody in a concert wants to come and sit there down and to hear 5 Lambegs just walk in and beat the life out of them and walk out again, because there's much more to it. And that's okay if the concert's terrible, by the way, and there's people sleeping, Glenn. If it's if it's people snoring in the back, the thing is, right, hey, call in the Lambegs here.
So there's not too many people sleeping with the Lambegs about, to be honest with you.
So it's about sort of channeling your repertoire to suit different venues and different places, and maybe trying something different. So with 2 smaller drums as well, Glenn.
Okay.
2 rope tension ones that look a bit like snare drums, but there's no snare in them, and it's made the exact same principle as the Lambeg. And again, it was the Korean club who provided those 2 drums for us. And it's about using those maybe to use a Lambeg rhythm on like a side drum.
Yeah.
Along with the fife, that the people can hear the fife a bit more clearly, and about being a bit more experimental, like on the ropes of the drums, maybe hitting the canes on the ropes at certain times in a concert in an indoor venue, and then at other times maybe playing the drums. So that's what our practice sort of looks like. And then it would finish then just after 9, as I say, and that will be resuming soon, but we have a Facebook page, Glenn, and that's where we would normally put up when we're practicing or what. But if there was somebody that came to us and said, you know what, I'd like to learn, well, we have the space here, and we have, there's absolutely no reason why they can't come in on a Tuesday during the day, or if they're working, maybe we can arrange another time or a night time, and we will most certainly bring them up to speed. But as I had said to you before, we've been blessed with members from other bands who can play the flute, so the transition to the fife wasn't overly hard for them, and also catching on to tunes and what we play wasn't overly hard for them. So you don't want to flog a dead horse, and you don't want to bring people in whenever they already know what they have to do, know the tunes. So that's where we are at the minute. So we're looking forward then to August and to this year. Everybody's sort of gearing up to it, and they're hoping. They had such a good time last 11th August that they're really hoping then we can sort of really push on a bit, and I think we will.
So you mentioned there about warming the fifes up. Is that just generally just getting them out and playing them, or what's the...
Well, that's it. They're a wooden instrument, and the more that you... Now, there'd be no slabbers down the flutes in Belfast, would there be? Any of the boys in Belfast slabber? Who knows? We'll not go down that route. But the more you play these instruments here, these fifes, the more you play them, the more easier they are to actually play. They actually, the more worn they are, and actually the more used they are, then the more. So whenever we say warm them up, it's really just as you cover the hole there and blow in some warm air and get them going. Go up and down the scale a few times.
Yeah. So you mentioned a wee bit there as well about bringing in sort of maybe rope tension drums, and that almost gives me connotations of the American kind of fife and drum kind of tradition as well. Is that there's a very close link there as well, isn't there? In terms of what you do.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we should ignore. We have a rich history. I know that over in America they lean heavy towards, and we're just past St. Patrick's Day there, but St. Patrick's, the original processions, I'm led to believe, were Presbyterians whenever they went over. So, we have a rich history in America, and it wouldn't be, but it's advantageous to us to link in with that. But I don't think that we should change. I see that whenever they're drumming, they have smaller drums than the Lambegs, and they use sort of like a mallet type of drum, and although to be fair now, the rhythms on it wouldn't be totally dissimilar, but at the same time it is a wee bit different.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's definitely an option to explore further, but as long as we wouldn't be compromising what we do.
No, I don't think. I think it's great for that whole idea, the fife and drumming connection across the world. I think one of the things that's useful for us here is to realise that, hey, this isn't the only place in the world that this particular style or approach to making music actually exists. This is a valid expression, a valid historical expression as well that exists in quite a lot of places. Obviously we mentioned that the US has got that there's a heritage in certain parts of the country that are linked into that. And then you also have, you've got Switzerland, which, and then you have Belgium, like so Fasnacht and stuff like that there. And then also right down to the fact that, I know that having spoken to, one of the guys he was a sergeant major in the US Old Guard, Mark Riley, and he had talked about that there's actually a tradition of fifing and drumming inside the Vatican as well. So there's a connection right across yeah. So just get that wee laughing on there, like so.
I have these visions of the Pope playing the Brian Boru drum, but badly. But no, you're exactly right. And if you look there, Korean part music band. What are they called? Korean Fife and Drum.
Yeah.
That's their name. It's not a Korean flute band, Florian flute and drum. Korean Fife and Drum. And Korean was also a garrison town. So it had ramparts the whole way around it.
So one of the things that we had, you talked a wee bit about there, was about people getting involved. How do people get involved? Because this is a good chance for you to plug in. Not that you've done a bad job of plugging what you've been doing already, but just in terms of people were getting involved, when is practices starting up? What's the crack in terms of that there? Because I know you mentioned that you have like a beginners type class, getting people up to speed and stuff. Yeah. So give us a wee overview.
So we had our beginners class there. It was helped and funded by the Ulster Scots Agency. So it's the 20-week programme, and it's now closed. But it'll resume again in September, once we get 11th of August past this again. But if anybody has any interest in playing the Lambeg drum, and playing the fife, and even if they've an interest in the historical aspect, and they don't want to play an instrument, as I had mentioned before, we're going to need torchbearers, we're going to need people to, to make this sort of more pageant feel, to the 11th of August celebrations, that if anybody has, and this is open to everybody, man, woman, child, whatever, it's open to everyone. If they have an interest, to contact Newgate Arts and Culture Centre. Contact the centre and leave your details for myself, and we will get back to you, and we will arrange something that will suit their needs, that they can be part of the club. There's no problems at all.
I like that as well, like hearing that type of thing in terms of the extra level of inclusivity there in regards to that, because I know that sometimes when people look at the makeup of bands and things like that there, they see a very male dominated kind of space and so on. I mean, obviously that's changed a heck of a lot over the years, and I look at the likes of Churchill and all that there, there's a wide range of bands that have got, lots of, in terms of mixed membership. But I think it's also great to highlight, that it may not necessarily be in the playing of the instrument, but there's a lot of other things that are connected to this, which is great for you to be involved in. And I think the wider we can throw the net of participation, the better that is for the longevity of culture.
Yeah. And so for instance, we try and reach out in the community as well, and do some educational outreach. So like our club at Christmas time there, with the support of BCN, we went into the Fountain Primary School. Whenever we went in, there was a young girl there who had been learning how to play the flute. And she would play jingle bells and stuff again, and so we had, and amongst the five players, we had two girls there. One was a pupil of the school, and she just came up and said she would have a go at it there in the end, and then so that's great. And also Leanne, a flute tutor within this centre from Cahard Band, she joined us again. So women and everybody can be part of it. And then we give out free selection boxes. Listen, you win everybody over with chocolate, Glenn. No matter how bad the performance is, if you give them a selection box, give them a selection box, and they're like, "Here, this is this."
Yeah, let's do it.
That's my box for me, So we were able, with the help, as I say, at BCN, to give them the whole school then a selection box each and stuff. So it's just whenever you're talking about being open to all there, the likes of that, can sort of demonstrate that too,
Yeah, and I think it's really important that this idea that it's not just about one aspect, that there's a lot of things that people can get involved in right across the board. And I think that's something a lot of even flute bands and stuff have, done, and is obviously over the years with the development of colour parties and other types of rules within the band to make sure that, it's not just about the musical aspect. It's like one of the key aspects, but it's that we have other rules for people to be involved in the wider culture.
Exactly. And you have people, Glenn, that those who have disabilities within our communities, who want to be involved in things, and maybe their physical needs don't allow them to do certain things. But there's always something that can be, people can feel involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important, because I think of, the likes of some of those bands, and I know that they've got some cymbal players in, who are in wheelchairs, they're being pushed along, they're doing that kind of stuff. There's others. I actually do a number of bands there was a band, one of the Belfast bands had a one-handed drummer. You know what I mean? And
I actually seen that.
do you know what I mean?
And I was very impressed.
So I think that that accessibility thing is extremely important as well. To say that there are things that would be really interesting. You know what I'm just thinking as we're talking about that, is that Pete Worrell has developed a lot of one-handed instruments. He developed a one-handed clarinet there recently, and I was kind of thinking, God, wouldn't it be amazing if he could come up with something that was, a woodwind, another, like almost a version of a flute or a fife or something that could be done, something like that. I think it'd be unbelievable.
I agree. Our people are quite ingenious too. I seen there that a very elderly man was walking in behind one of the bands who have the skeleton drums, and he's a fluter in the back row, and he had actually adapted his flute, and he had got somebody to adapt it, that he was able to blow in the same as a penny whistle, it was the flute. There's ways and means.
Yeah,
if we apply ourselves.
Yeah, I've seen that. I think Miller Wicks had done a whistle head, and I think,
did they as well?
I think I think they had done a whistle head, and I don't know whether Pete Worrell had
They've
done.
probably seen that man, you see.
No, but I think that I have seen that a few times in regards to that. But I think anything that expands the capability of people being able to play in some shape or form is definitely worthwhile getting involved in. So, in terms of hopes, dreams for the future for the Garrison, what does that look like for you?
I just think, Glenn, that we just, we've started the club, and as I said, we have an awful lot of support, and I think it's just slowly building in that. I don't think it's, it'd be easy for me, Glenn, to say here, we want to see 50 fifes in the street and all this. No, actually, we're just that happy to have all the guys from different bands playing together. And you know what rivalry is like in bands. It's not so easy to get them to play together. So our vision is to keep that happening. And maybe, Glenn, one thing would be is, as I'd mentioned, we have had loads of participation from various different bands around the country. That to have more, Glenn, if we could have a few more, would be something that would be very welcome. And bring everybody together. And I think that would be, but just to really build on what we've achieved so far.
Yeah. But there's a wider issue there, Mark, is there? But I think for me, there's this idea of the need within the community for cohesiveness, collaboration, more sense of togetherness, needing to all pull in the same direction. So in some senses, some of the ideas behind what we're trying to do with the likes of the Garrison is a microcosm of some of the wider things that we need to do as a community as well.
And probably that's probably where, my thoughts are maybe geared towards,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. So, folks, if you want to get involved with the Garrison, and you don't have to necessarily be from London there to be involved. You can be forever if you want to make the wee hour-and-a-half trip down from Belfast and get involved. I'm sure these guys will not turn you away. But Mark, just want to say thanks very much for taking the time out to be with us on Made the Parade, sharing your stuff with us. I think it's great to have that perspective.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Now, we have a small presentation to Glenn then. So I wasn't expecting this, you see. So a wee set of Garrison cufflinks.
Oh, wow.
So for you to have, one of the guys within Newgate Arts, Darren, has a small social enterprise,
right?
And he can make all these for the bands and different things. So he has made a set, and I am going to present those then to you.
Oh wow, that's taken me a bit of a background. Thank you very much. I don't know why you'll be able to see that there on the camera there, folks. But no, that's brilliant. Well, thank you. And coming down and getting free gifts and all here is brilliant. They come down more often and stuff, But listen, well, thank you very much for being a part of this podcast and, just sharing the stuff. I think it's great to widen the sort of the net, I suppose, in terms of what we've been talking about, because not that we've done the bands, the death. I don't want to, I think there's loads and loads of stuff there, but it's nice to widen the kind of catch in regards to the culture and what else is out there,
I think it's great, Glenn, as well, that, you're able to make people aware of things that are happening
Yeah.
within the community that there maybe wouldn't be. As I say, we're out on the 11th of August. Well, how many people, and we do concerts and that, but how many people does that really reach?
Yeah.
How many people know that think themselves, well, there's not much happening in Londonderry these days. Well, actually, there's things happening, and so.
Well, maybe what we'll do is, whenever you guys are back up and running and stuff with practices and stuff, we'll get down and we'll actually, if you are up for it, it would be great to come down and maybe film a practice and see what you guys are up to.
Remember Sammy Campbell ended up with 2 hearing aids.
Right, okay.
So,
Listen, I'm tinnitus already, mate, so I'll put a set of headphones on and watch from the outside or whatever else.
Can you turn the volumes down for the people? No, listen, that's we're only joking, but yes, of course, that would be fantastic, Glenn.
Yeah. Listen, well, thanks again, folks. Join us again for another episode. I know God knows what's going to come up next. I know I'm going to be doing an episode with the guys from Newgate, talking about the centre, talking about all the great things that are going on here, and hopefully we're going to get back into the swing of putting out more regular episodes, because I think that there's a lot of things to be covered in regards to our community, our culture, and stuff there. So while the podcast is called Made to Parade, it's going to go far beyond that from now on. We're going to try and include as much as we possibly can from across all aspects of our culture. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe on this, share this with people and who may be interested. And until the next episode, look after yourselves and take it easy.